You know, our #1 priority has got to be creating jobs. And again, we're going to succeed economically only if we're protecting our quality of life and our natural environment. And when I went to look at the language, the enabling legislation for the Vermont Housing Conservation Board, it said exactly that. Its purpose is to improve the quality of life for Vermonters and to maintain, for the benefit of future generations, the essential characteristics of the Vermont countryside. You know, we're going to succeed as a state precisely because we do that, because we protect what makes Vermont special. The question specifically asked about affordable housing. And you know, affordable housing has a meaningful impact on our communities. Good housing changes attitudes and provides real opportunity. And I actually saw that in my hometown of Montpelier about 1990, or 1995 maybe. They got involved in a major renovation project. There had been a cinder block apartment building. Imagine cinder blocks, no insulation. The quality of life in that building was horrible. The conditions were horrible, and indeed it was condemned. And VHCB joined with some other partners and renovated the whole block, put in some really beautiful housing, so beautiful that my daughter, who was about 6 at the time, when we would walk past it, said, "Mom, can't we live there?" Because it was this rainbow colors. They did such a beautiful job. You know, housing, VHCB creates, it creates safe, affordable housing, but it also creates jobs. And you know, as we're making these investments, we need to consider that you know, these are investments that pay back in our communities in multiple ways. It circulates our dollars. And indeed, it's, you know, we can think about it as our permanent stimulus fund.
In the legislature, there has been no bigger champion for housing and conservation than myself. It was handed to me by Howard Dean when I first went on to the Appropriations Committee when we were in a downturn financial cycle. And he said, "Susan, this is really, really important, and it never matters how bad things get. This is the future of Vermont." So I have defended and protected housing and conservation. It's great economic development. In talking about sustainable agriculture, growing food locally, if we pave it over, it's pretty hard to plant things there. In terms of affordable housing, the Republicans always come after affordable housing, and they want private developers to have access to the housing and conservation funds because they can do it cheaper. Right. And the simple conversation I have had with them year after year after year is part of affordable housing is it is affordable forever, in perpetuity, always. It will be there for the next generation to be able to buy their first affordable home. And the business community and the development community goes, I'd say, right, get out. And that's the end of the conversation. I would absolutely use bonded dollars. I can tell you how we got out of the bonded dollars, and that's actually when Howard handed it to me. Money was really tight. We were carrying a lot of debt. He said, "We've got money in the general fund, let's move it over there, but if we ever need to go back to bonded dollars, you betcha, we go back to bonded dollars."
Obviously, I agree that the Housing and Conservation Board is absolutely an essential program for the state, because as I said earlier, we need to make investments. If Vermont's going to continue to be a good place, investments have to be made. I was one of the authors, one of many authors of what was called the Housing and Conservation Trust Fund back in 1987 when it was created. And what a wonderful time, what a wonderful coalition of people coming together. You wouldn't think of housing advocates and land conservationists having a similar interest, but they did. And because of the vision of a lot of people, we got that legislation through the legislature that year, and what a wonderful program it has been for the state of Vermont. Thousands of units of affordable housing, thousands of acres of land. We protected farms and we protected forest lands, and Vermont is such a better place for those efforts. I even got to cut a few ribbons at some of the openings of the housing project. That's when I was lieutenant governor, so, which is what lieutenant governors often do. But I also recognize in tough times, and we're in tough times, that budget realities intrude on what it is that we want to do. So I agree with what Susan said. I think probably we all agree here that yes, you go to the Capitol bill to look for funding when the budget is in the straits that it is right now. We've done it before and we need to do it again. But we have to recognize that businesses make investments. Even when times are tough, businesses make investments, and it's only at their peril that they ignore making investments. And the state is no different. We will lose a whole lot of what makes Vermont such an important place, such a special place to all of us, if we lose this Housing and Conservation Board. We have had a governor for 8 years who's done everything he can to kill that program. And it's because of the leadership from the folks up here and a lot of you out there and many others that the legislature has fought back against that effort successfully year after year after year. And as governor, I'm going to keep that program going, whatever it takes.
That the Douglas administration will propose and has proposed not to do conservation during tough economic times. I want to talk a little bit about why that's so important right now to the state of Vermont, and why, if you elect me governor, I will defend that program as vigorously as I defend the housing part of the deal. Listen, this is where we're going. As environmentalists, we have to listen to the National Institute of Science. This is what they say about our future. In the next 10 years, New Jersey's climate is coming to Vermont. In the next 40 years, the mid-Atlantic states' climate is coming to Vermont. That is assuming that that has nothing to do with future emissions. It's about the emissions that we've already put into this planet. What does that mean for Vermont agriculture that's struggling so hard today to survive? It means that we have an opportunity. That if we stick with Paul Brune and don't cover our farmland with big box stores, we have a bright future. Why? I'm a farmer. I own a dairy farm, a small Jersey farm. I can tell you that we cannot farm without water. If you look at the future predictions of those very qualified scientists, and it's happening much faster than they predicted, the main food belt in America is going to dry up. If you don't believe me, go talk to the farmers out in California. We have an opportunity in the New England states because we're going to get 20% more water in the form of ice and rain in the winters. We're going to have sustained droughts in the summer. If we capture that water, we have an extraordinarily bright future, not only to grow and deliver locally, but to get to New York, Montreal, and other nearby Boston markets. That means that our farmers have a bright future. It will be useless to them if we develop that land. Now let me tell you.
I come by a passion for the land trust genetically. When my father was actually much younger than I am now, he and other young visionaries like Darby Bradley and Rick Carbon sat around our kitchen table, and they were trying to figure out whether or not it would be legal to convey the development rights on prime ag land in perpetuity. And you know what? At the end of the day, they didn't know if it would hold up in court. But it was out of their belief that it was the right thing to do, they pressed on. And out of those efforts, the Vermont Land Trust was born. One of the most extraordinary institutions we have in our state, one of the most extraordinary institutions that's been a model for other states around the country. And my father didn't take on this particular cause because his grandparents were farmers in Newport, or their grandparents before them. He brought that to the forefront of his work because he fundamentally believed that a community that could not feed itself would not survive. And I took that lesson at a very young age, and I continued to work with that lesson moving forward in the legislature. People like Susan Bartlett have been leaders in making sure that in tough times and in times when there is pressure to do other things, more politically palatable things, that you stay focused